Yeah,
That's a point. of
And that's
mine.
always been an issue, that's been a question that I've had as well. And, oh yeah, you gotta turn your mic on. That's always been a question that I've had, and I don't see any difference between.
I don't either.
Steamboat landing and the
I mean-
public landing. I suppose, I appreciate you raising that, Ramito, because I think we do need another addendum for vessels operating off of steamboat landing. Because since we're breaking this down by location, public landing, library park, we need to recognize that vessels are operating from steamboat landing. And I think it's a huge,
I mean.
potential
Well,
liability.
I agree,
And
I agree, but, I mean, what I was getting at is, you know, and I know what you're referring to now, but, I mean, if you're talking about charter boats that are coming in to pick up passengers, that's different than.
No, we,
Commercial passenger.
no, we're
vessels.
talking about,
Yeah, I know, yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
day sales. Yeah.
I agree, put it on the
Yep,
list,
yep.
steamboat landing,
And
what's next?
Okay.
another point, there's also boats that run, day sail boats, six packs, as far as I know, that run, operations out of the yacht club, for example, that pick up passengers out of the yacht club, which is also public landing, or public town.
That's an interesting question, is it? It's.
Well, but if we're gonna look at all of the operations, let's look at all of the
I think
operations.
that the yacht
And
club-
all of the
Well, I think the yacht club
situations.
one would fall, I think that has to fall under this investigation of vessels operating from private property, because the yacht club, though it is town-owned property, is leased to the yacht club, so it essentially becomes private property.
Let's try to keep it simple here, and I understand what you're saying, but
I
that
mean-
falls under the category of a licensing agreement for the entire harbor,
All right, so you raised the questions about private docks.
yes.
Now, let's look at, if we're gonna raise the questions of private docks, which is totally separate from town, let's raise the questions for all of the passengers, vessels that runs out of all of the docks, like yacht club, Lyman Moores, private docks, public landing, in everything. Let's just look at all of them, because I think I think if you,
36-pack boats in Camden. You can't, it's gonna be tough to really regulate them
That's what we're
all.
talking about, that's down the road, that's what Jeremy and Audra are looking into.
Yep.
And that would be, I think that would be a complete ordinance change.
I mean, a lot
Can
of,
I just ask a question? And this is going back to we just had a side conversation about insurance, but the dock, for instance, the ramp for any of them, are they town managed for Appledore?
No, they're not.
So when it's a private dock, they're totally on their own, and the town's not responsible, they don't take them out, they don't monitor, they don't manage? Okay, clarification. Okay. Just because if I was Joe Public and I was walking down the ramp, I would assume I was on town property, because I'm walking downtown on a harbor. But,
No, that's why, even like at Lyman
Which is
Morse,
why
we have a little,
insurance is-
we have a little rope that says,
yeah, I've seen yours,
boat
yeah.
owners only, and Stu Smith has one at the Appledore that says, passengers only or something like that, so you really can't go down that little ramp.
All right, moving on, the next one on the list is license fee, and I'd like to tie that together with the request by the Day Sailor Association to extend the licensing agreement term to 3 years. I personally don't have any specific disagreement with the 3-year term. Discussion?
yeah, so we get the 3-year term. Does this yearly fee lump into 3 years, or do you still pay that as a yearly fee? That's the other question.
I think the payment schedule would be an annual thing.
Annual.
So that ties in with this,
No.
okay, that you have, and there's barely tell what's been highlighted, but that's the new verbiage for the licensing agreement. And with the fees, that paragraph has been reworded.
Yeah, January 1st. Yeah.
So what's been added, it's $2,500 per year as set by the Camden Select Board in accordance with the Harbor and Waterways Ordinance of the Town of Camden. payable January 1st of each year, subject to an annual review each year.
The only thing I would want to say is, when is that annual review?
Well, it's
Subject-
before January 1st.
So subject to a
Completion.
positive or a
Completion of
or
an
a
annual
successful annual review.
Yeah, we probably should say that,
Yeah.
completion of an annual review.
Subject to an annual review, so that's,
At the end of the prior season.
Because what if there are some demerit points or found that you're like, well, in March, I'll be able to fix that? Are they denied because their annual review, is there a margin
whether
for
approved,
corrections?
subject to correction of this issue.
I mean,
I think
it's
any
pretty
like
strict.
safety kind of issue, like if we have like anything, like you get an 835 from the Coast Guard or something's out of compliance, but they pretty much control, when, if they feel like there's a safety issue, they control that, like I think getting into that.
Yeah,
would be-
that's Coast Guard stuff. I mean, what we're talking about is
Performance in the harbor.
performance on how you operate on the town docks. you
And
know.
is there enough time between the end of the summer season and with docks coming out and everything else for this review to happen? Is this a sit-down over a cup of coffee? Is this reviewing the
Didn't we
books?
talk about that in the last?
Looking at his logbook and,
Yeah, we said that Steve wanted that to happen during at the end of that season, prior to January 1st,
Before memories
before
get
people
lost.
go away or the boats get.
We can certainly overcomplicate this and put a date in there and say,
Right, but-
review by October 15th. If it doesn't happen, then boom, they can come in and say, well, we didn't have a review, so we're approved. But this is, when it comes to the first of the year, the select board says, okay, what's the review? And, somebody can step up and say, this boat has been abusing the parking privileges, or this boat has been accosting people on the dock, or whatever. And that's when the select board says, well, okay, you're out. I mean, it's just that simple. It's,
Regarding the fee, are we feeling like we don't need to do any kind of graduated, I know, don't the windjammers do a thing where they,
we taled about that. Over 3 years.
decided it was just
it's,
minimal money.
You know,
Yeah, I'm fine with
10%,
that. I just-
$25.
yeah,
No, $250.
yeah.
So if we have a 3-year agreement, the fee per day sailor for the primary vessel has been $2,500. In my research, going back 2 prior years to this year, 2017, it was $2,500 then. So I guess, do we feel it would be appropriate to have an increase in that fee? And
Well-
regarding the 3-year term, maybe you just talked about this, would it be graduated escalation?
Here's another concept that's on the table, all right? Because there are, a couple of the issues are the tables on the docks and the parking, okay? So if those are so important, the town wants to put them in a separate spot on the corner, okay? So that could be, town is offering that space to the day sailors, okay? If you want a table on the dock, there's another fee for that, if that's so important. If you want your car down there next to your table, there's another fee for that, if that's so important. So, what you're talking about is, okay, the dock is $2,500. If your car is really that important to have down there all the time, that's $2,500. If your table is that important to have out there and you don't want to be on the town kiosk, that's $2,500. Now, each boat has the ability to determine how important those issues are to them.
You're
So
just
it's a-
making up
so it's a-
those numbers?
Just making up those numbers.
So it's a matter of money now?
No, it's a matter of how important you feel those issues are to you.
You mean, and they pay for them then?
Yep.
pay for those privileges.
Yep.
Above and beyond the basic fee for the float use.
Yep.
Wow.
And again, I mean, I'm not saying, I'm not throwing this out and saying this is what we have to do. I'm throwing this out as
As an option.
we're at a stumbling block here. And, the issues that always come up are those three issues. You're taking over the dock and taking over the parking. Well,
Well, let's divide this a little bit, the parking and the tables. The parking, I think we discussed this a little bit before, is, there's 7 permits, and each one has 1 permit. So that's 7 parking spots that do we know how many parking spots are in that total, in that parking space?
108?
108.
no, no.
Yeah, it's something like that in the TY limit.
I think it's in the 60s, but I don't know.
86.
I don't- Whatever it is.
It's been reduced by,
Has it?
I think.
So-
Well, the
But the-
best case scenario that TD, whoever this is, TY Lin proposed was 86 spaces
After the redevelopment.
after the redevelopment. But they don't really,
It may be in the ballpark of that,
Say it's
Well, let's say 95.
95.
75 to 100. I think it's easier, obviously, because the town controls those parking permits, it's easier for the town to say, hey, you either pay extra money or get rid of them, because obviously they have control on those 7 permits. But I think the town should put more control on who actually park in that parking lot, because we see it all the time, that other businesses use this parking lot way more than us. And
well,
that's
not more than you, but they use it as much as you, yes.
as much as us in terms of like crew and actually workers or employees of all the businesses, but also like the businesses in terms of like clients.
Yep.
So, but the issue here is, I think, employees of other companies, that obviously the town doesn't have control because there's no permits, but we can tell you, like, there is a lot of businesses that park in that parking lot and uses like way more than 7 parking permits.
Second shift of
But
all
the-
the restaurants.
So-
They
The
don't give
difference,
us
the
2
key,
hour.
the key with the
Come in at
parking
3
down
a.m.
there is that the day sailor permits allow you to park there legally all day. Whereas if other people if other businesses, employees, owners, whoever, are using it they are allowed to use it for 2 hours. That is a completely legal thing. If they use it beyond 2 hours, then they are breaking the law, they're breaking the ordinance, and that is not up to us to regulate. That's up to the police department to regulate and the parking enforcement. That's why I've never understood why, this is a simple parking enforcement issue. There are 7 spots, 7 permits that are legally allowed to be there, and everybody else should be being, monitored by Scotty and the rest of them. I think that's a pretty simple fix for this, if we feel like it's being abused by other businesses.
Do you see
What's
parking
the
monitors?
simple fix?
I mean, we see,
More
we see,
enforcement by the police department, by the
we see
walkie-talkie.
parking monitors maybe once a day or twice a day, but not enough to like enforce every 2 hours. And also, if we're gonna, raise the issue of us 7 permits, overusing or using the permit, I mean, let's put on the table also the fishermen and the harbor master and everybody else too. So like, and see what they think about these.
Well, what this work group is about is
Yeah,
the
no,
day
exactly,
sailors right now.
absolutely. I'm just,
But, and the other thing is, it's like, the question is, what does that permit really say, that parking permit? And, everybody that wants to park down there says, well, it says we're allowed to park there anytime, all the time. It's not. I mean, And the other thing it also says is that, that none of your employees, vendors, ticket sales, anybody else can park in that parking lot ever.
That's correct. And
Right.
we enforce that.
We do. At least I do. I tell them all they'll get fired if they do it.
Okay?
I mean, there might be an emergency, like.
So, but,
Enforce that.
but then that permit, you know, it's kind of gray of whether it really says you can park there anytime, all the time. You know, it specifies when you can park.
I just have a simple request. I talked to Scott for quite a bit just about this whole parking thing. And I think instead of us telling you how it goes down there, it might be really beneficial to have Scott tell you what he feels like the public landing is like in reference to us. Because he has some very decided opinion, which are very different than mine, but I think that like he brought up some great points about, he knows who's using the parking lot too, because he sees the same cars every day. And he knows where his limitations and the amount of hours he works in a week. Just good information.
I guess,
Well, can I just say
Yeah, what
that
do you-
I was hoping that we would not necessarily shelve both the parking and the tables issue, but that we were gonna wait until the larger picture of the harbor redesign, because on many levels, I think that the tables have done extraordinary efforts to come off the dock itself.
And that's a
so
good point. So-
we need to stop saying they're on the dock, because they're actually not. And unlike me, I used to get reprimanded for not yelling at the tourists and getting them to stop at my table. They don't do that, you know, so it's a total different culture. So I think strides have been made, and and Pick says every time we see him, I need a new dock. If that's gonna happen, and we're gonna go from 108 to 85 or whatever, that's when shit's gonna hit the fan. And
so
we
in
really
the
need to start
outline,
talking about
let's do tables. All right?
tables and parking,
Tables
because
and.
if the
and
town's
just
gonna
her
remove
presentation, all right?
30
Go ahead,
spots
you-
collectively, the town's saying they wanna put in greenery and remove parking spots, then they're gonna need to take seriously more than just 7 spots.
Yeah.
And really start thinking about parking down on the harbor.
I think at that point, you're gonna almost have to put parking meters in, because
Yeah.
if you don't. The one thing I thought Scott said that was really
It's like
super
leave-
smart though.
Leave tables as is
Parking
until the harbor redevelopment.
Parking them off like the.
That's kind of, I know that's what Steve's pushing for.
Option,
Because
all right?
then he just
So
knows
one
who's
option.
there and everybody else can get the
I
ticket.
think
Option two
If you want.
is
But what's
the
the,
kiosk that the town wants. Combined kiosk.
is there?
Option three would be kiosk free for boats that opt into that. Pay for tables, boats that don't opt into it.
But even, I mean, if they do the kiosk thing, which I know no one really wants, well, none of us really want, wouldn't that be something that would be done when they redevelop the?
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
that's-
Yeah, like this is all
Yeah.
when this actually gets built. For something for next year,
Yeah.
we've,
Because
Steve already did a lot of work moving us off the boardwalk to get us
Oh,
through
and
until the
it's,
rebuild.
and it has worked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's made a difference down there.
Until the rebuild, though, I think one way to really clear it out, like what we've been saying, is the waiting area.
Yeah.
if we could build a
The
simple waiting area.
would free up the whole boardwalk.
Yeah, the waiting area is huge. I mean, if you stand there, if you go there, let's say at noon on a busy
All right,
day,
so we put another charge in there for waiting area.
and that's,
Or, charge, but it's another
Well, this is us trying to clear their dock off.
I
I get what you're saying. If you-
I never thought the waiting area, the people waiting for the boats was the issue down there. I always thought it was the tables and being solicited. I mean, I could walk up and down that dock 6 to 8 times a day, and every time I walk by a table, hey, you wanna go for a boat ride?
What's that?
Do they say, hey, they wanna go for a boat ride, or they say, hello, how are you doing today?
Well,
Well,
No,
there
but
is a difference.
seriously.
I'm talking 3-4 years ago, it's,
Well, this isn't 3 or 4.
We're not
years
supposed to,
ago.
we're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, that's not
I
allowed.
know,
So,
I know that.
so
I go by and I'm just so grateful because they completely ignore me. And as understandably they should, because I'm not looking for them and they're not looking at me.
Exactly.
But when I try to go by when a boat's just about to go out, I can't. It's like being at a yard sale.
Yeah, and-
It's just mobs.
we don't want that either. We just
Yeah.
don't know what to do. Like, what happens is people are so anxious to get
Oh,
their
yeah.
seat, and then the boat comes in and they crowd the dock, and then we're trying to unload, we're like 2 boats are unloading,
Yeah.
and it may not even be our boat that's loading next. And then it becomes, so
Yeah, it's mob scene.
we have to like kind of push people, but it's like, it's like this mob, like, I gotta get on the boat, like, I need to get on the airplane, like,
And we don't want them on the dock
I'm not
because
gonna miss my
that's
flight.
not safe.
And what you're saying,
Trying to
that's
keep
right.
them off the dock.
That brings up a whole nother issue,
Which
you
is-
know? Do
But
we
the
have too
dock
many
safety.
boats?
Can I ask a question? I mean, is people concerned about the actually tables taking over the benches, the dock, or they're concerned about like customers kind of like gathering in front of the tables or gathering in front of the ramp? So what is really the issue here?
I thought the issue was the tables, but
What,
apparently, I mean,
but
other
what,
people.
what
are
is the issue
thinking-
with the tables?
My
I
understanding.
mean, the view, the looks, the
No, I mean, but this goes back to, and again, I mean, I said, it's a whole lot better now. This goes back to when they were out further on the docks, creating a nuisance.
No, I understand.
Okay? Now that they've been set back, I mean, it's made a big difference.
But what I'm trying to get is, like, I know they're trying to move us, but the reason why, why they wanted to move us is because doesn't look good, or because they don't want us to solicit it to people walking by, or they don't want the umbrellas because they look, what is the reason for
Everybody's
it?
got a different
Everybody has a
opinion.
different answer.
All right, but, I mean, there is no reason why, I mean, I haven't really heard, well, it's because this, and that. Okay, well,
Well, I
let's
think
just
there
think
is-
about that.
I think
or
there
let's-
is a shared concern about overcrowding at certain times, and that's just the people, so that would be the waiting area
Yep.
issue. I think that's one that everybody has seen at one time or another. The presence of the tables is one that I don't think is universally seen as a problem as it now stands. I spent a lot of time at the public landing this summer, kind of for this purpose, and I would actually argue the opposite. I would actually argue that the tables add something now to the public landing, especially during the slower times of year. And when you go down there, whether it's a foggy day or whatever, and there are fewer tables, it's dead. And it is kind of not the greatest feeling, to be honest. Whereas when you go down there and there's 2, 3, 4 tables, and the people are not accosting you, they're just saying hello, it's actually kind of nice. And it sort of makes it seem like there's some vibrancy. So, I don't think there is a unified feeling of the problem with the tables. I think there is a concern with the crowds and, at times, periodic crowds. And so I think that's one issue that can go on the bullet points,
Which,
And I
Yeah, we all
just
agree.
think if, moving, if you take that same space, I don't even think you need that as much space, but if you put additional seating somewhere and we could just refer people, say, hey, we'll come get you, we'll come get you, we'll come get you, because that's normal in the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
And I think we could do that for a limited amount of space, and honestly, I think that we could do that even if we needed the table.
It's in the
we could just
shade,
do
that
it.
was huge.
I mean, that's
And
gonna,
it's just buying those benches and paying them off for over a period of time.
that's gonna be a huge change if we have like a section to refer people to
We
move,
just
to
trial it
wait.
next summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause
I mean,
there's-
weren't we thinking over kind of by Skips, kind of by the hot dog thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right
yeah,
next to that
anchor
corner
is and
there.
everything.
It's sort of already there.
Pretty
Yeah.
shady, which is
Yeah.
another issue, their kind of
Yeah, there's
elderly
two benches,
clientele is
but-
that they don't
Yeah.
have to be in the sun. And
Yeah.
there's
It
always,
wouldn't take much to do something.
No.
and there's always gonna be a few people who just really can't sit long enough, like, or stand long enough to wait. I mean, it's just,
Some flower boxes and sea roses
You know.
and
So can we just wrap up one other thing? Because I think trialing that next summer is, shame Pix isn't here, but the other thought I had was, we've got Lobstermen with their little 5 spots or 6, I don't know how spots. Could we, just to kind of clarify parking and allow that the harborist of the harbor parks are available for tourists, that Lobster and then Schooner, you know, and we just say that this is the
Specific.
block of, and that way then Tom or whatever the guy's name is can just scan and go, yep, those are the parks.
I think we proposed
And
that
maybe
before.
you're already kind of doing that by default, but.
Maybe, but I think the problem with doing that is then it becomes like the fisherman's spots, which are empty a lot of the time, and that's kind of infuriating, you know what I mean? I get why, but, you know, you go down there, like, oh my God, the spots are empty. Whereas the ticket, the little permit thing allows you to, you know, use every space.
So-
The fishermen are only because they have to offload.
So, you know, we're really bouncing around a lot.
Yeah, we
here.
are.
We're
Yeah. I was
bouncing
just trying to
between
make some
parking and
ideas.
tables, and we're not really coming up with definitive answers for either one. Okay, so where are we on your list there? Are we doing parking or are we doing tables?
I think we're doing both,
Yeah, we're
you know, I think we're identifying.
That's why I was saying, even if we tried some of these things before the
Yeah,
rejig,
Yeah.
I think.
then we can actually offer, sorry to keep
Right.
interrupting, but.
I think that, I do think that from a parking standpoint, I think we need to find out more from parking enforcement. So I think we should talk to Scotty, you know what I mean?
I'd love to hear
And
what
sort of
he has to
say, okay, you tell us what we're actually seeing down there. Because obviously you have a perception that the day sailors and/or others are abusing this. I guess I want to hear that. I want to hear that from somebody whose job it is to monitor that. So I think we should, you know, I'll reach out to him. I don't mind.
I think part of this work session, I mean, we can certainly postpone anything we want to and say, we'll deal with that at a later date. But time's running out, you know, we need to step up and we need to deal with these. And, you know, we can say, oh, okay, we'll wait for somebody else to advise us.
Well, I think that,
But the concept here is we develop ideas, conceptual ideas, you know, and, you know, okay, one idea was, you know, and I'm lost whether we're dealing with tables now or parking, but let's say parking. One idea is, okay, you pay for a parking permit.
Which
That
is not-
determines whether you really want that permit or you're willing to walk from town down to the landing, okay? The other idea is, okay, you don't have a parking permit and you park like any other citizen down there, you have 2 hours. Okay? The other idea is with a day sailor license agreement, during the month of July and August, no parking down there whatsoever. You can load, unload, but no parking whatsoever. And then you're there for spring, you're there for fall, when you really need a vehicle. But when you're out sailing all day long and your vehicle is sitting there, it's a waste of space.
Could we maybe then like have a fee for trash removal, because it's not completely wasting space, it's my trash, it's my recycling, like, it's being used, it's not being used the way you
that's
conceptualize
We
it,
bring coolers, we
That's where my
have
wife-
charters,
but
we,
office space.
you know, we unload and unload constantly all day long, so it's not like just a waste of time. We do, Dom
That's where my
has
wife,
bait.
she pumps for our child's milk in between cruises in our vehicle.
So it's for
You know,
safety.
like, it's used.
It's for safety too. I mean, I know, like, you know, it came up before that, you know, if we have some sort of an emergency on the boat, and, I mean, it would be nice to have a vehicle there to like bring someone, you know.
How about a middle ground with the charge and the parking? $2,500 is $1,000 more than any of the people with permits in Portland pay, just for a reference.
I'm just throwing that number out there.
Well, I know you went large, so I'm going smaller. Right?
Yep.
is there a middle ground? Like, if this is what the issue is, like, it seems like to me, it's always has to be right or wrong. Why don't we find a middle ground?
Yeah.
Like,
I
it
mean,
seems
this is
like,
No, and it's not a right or wrong. That's why we're trying to like come up with different policies, and let's digest it,
In
and-
terms of,
with the way-
meeting though, in terms of this meeting, as a work session, we first of all can't come up with, solutions, we can't come up with actions. So I think the point is, let's come up with, these are, you just threw out a new one, which is an interesting one, about taking out July and August. Let's come up with a, formal list similar to what Elliot's done, for us to talk about at our next regular
And-
scheduled meeting,
yeah.
with
What-
these different ideas. And at that point, we will have to decide.
And what I'm suggesting is, we just, issues,
Yep.
all right? And
Yep.
every
Issues,
issue.
options,
Parking,
issues, options.
yes,
Yep.
issues,
Okay.
options,
Paying,
perfect.
paying for a parking
Yep.
spot doesn't take care of, doesn't do anything to the parking problem.
but the
Well-
one thing that allowance
doesn't
has
create
right
more
now, though,
parking
it
spots.
says, right, so if you put us all the same as everybody else, right, and 2-hour parking is 2-hour parking, then are you gonna suddenly restrict our employees from parking for 2 hours at a time and not everybody else in the public landing? I just wanna clarify
Are
that
you
too.
gonna leave it at the mercy of Scott? or
Yeah.
Tom, or whatever the hell.
Right now, we don't allow
Scott.
them to park there.
Like,
Yeah,
it really
I mean-
is a difference, the way that's written, I'm like, I just tell people, it's like, not worth me losing my license, so you better not be here when I come in. Like, I better not find you parking down here, cause you're that lazy.
Speaking of that, there's where is that? I did put something in here, all right? Under parking.
Item G.
Item G.
G.
Yeah, digest that for a minute. Licensee shall prohibit any employee, supplier, contractor, or agent of the licensee or any crew member of the day sailor vessel from parking in the parking space at the public landing for more than 2 hours. Each violation may be cause for suspension of this license agreement for 1 day.
Yeah.
So, what that does, is it takes it out of Scotty's hands, and you're all self-regulated, right?
Could I have you change the word contractor, though? Because if Larique comes down to work on their motor, why is that any different than Larique coming down to work on somebody else's motor?
That's in there because it was in there.
Was
But,
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but,
Yeah, I got Journey's End coming over to
Yeah.
work on the motor.
an employee,
Yeah, that's kind of out of our control, that.
supplier and contractor, I
Both
think
need to
should
go.
probably come out of there.
Yeah.
I would say so.
I want somebody to come supply my boat without me driving to the store.
And what is agent will
Yeah.
refer to?
An agent,
I don't know, I could see the agent
That's a
thing, like-
catch-all.
yeah,
That's a catch-all phrase or word in there. Covers
that's
everything.
If suddenly you have like
I mean, that's if you have somebody that's self-employed, that's, then maybe, I don't know.
Or someone sells tickets for you somewhere else?
This is just what was in the original.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I mean, probably supply contractor and agent should be out of there. I mean, employees, I understand, and us, but
Employee.
Well, like if
That
you
are
have,
crew
having
members.
someone repaint the name on your boat for a day,
well, like, if-
he's an agent, he's been employed by you to come down and paint your boat, and he can't park there.
I think of that
That's
as
how
like
I
a
would
subcontractor.
understand it.
But I do think like, you could have like somebody you're paying, like as, you could be contracting somebody just to come and work for the day.
Captain,
Right. Like, I get that.
yeah.
Just
I
contractor.
don't,
in
I
this-
don't see it as a big issue.
well, but that's it falls under crew member. Because it's a crew member of the boat.
Yeah. I guess it's one of those, like, I can understand why they'd want to keep it, but
Yep.
I mean, I don't need to, I don't
And
care
it's
that
of
much.
the licensee,
So, like,
so
if
if
you
you don't
guys
have
really
any
want-
license,
You don't have
you're
to
the
get tripped
licensee,
up
so
on
if you
it.
don't have an agent. you don't
I mean,
have to worry.
this is very clear. I mean, it's very clear that
Right.
we're not supposed to letting anybody that works on the boat
Right.
park there, period.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine for me.
Okay, so this discussion for the last, whatever, 20 minutes or so originated with the line item, the license fee at $2,500 a year. Pay basic privilege of using the floor.
So is it,
Which currently includes.
Well, yeah, right, which includes all this other stuff. So, does anyone on the committee feel it would be appropriate to raise that basic fee?
it was raised about 5 years ago? They brought it up quite a bit, I think.
What would be the purpose to raise it? Is there
It's odd that it's,
expenses that we're incurring?
Why are fees raised?
yeah, why do we raise the
That's a
finger floats and all the rest of it?
philosophical
Should this, I mean, should this be separated from our discussion of all the other harbor fees, though? You know what I mean? Or, I will say that, yes, I believe that it should be raised. It has
For
not been
purposes of this the agreement that we have to get done,
prior to the,
says yes. Prior to the
other-
fee schedule
the fee
being
schedule.
revised.
I mean, if you're gonna raise the $2,500, and you also, there's an idea of charging extra for parking permits and tables, why don't you just like come up with a whole new budget and say, well, maybe they keep at 2,500 or even less than that, but then add $1,000 for the car and then $1,000 for the table and things like that, so you
That's
could.
where we got into this.
You create a whole new budget for it, so that, because $2,500 now includes the table and the parking. So if you're gonna add
A la
that to it, I think probably $2,500 should be less, and then add
So,
Both.
so what I would suggest is wording that as we would recommend an increase in fees if,
In a schedule?
increase of fees if there are no additional fees. You know, and if we can like clean that up somehow, word-wise, and if we charge, if we add on a parking fee and add on a table fee, then we leave this fee alone.
or less.
Yes, that's right, or less, because we're looking at raising fees, one way or the other. within
So you're
that
raising
law.
fees already by charging extra by the,
We're looking at raising fees, but we're also looking at, solving the table problem and the parking problem and trying to like get you guys to like think it through and decide how important it really is to have a vehicle there.
so you, okay, so you planning to like develop an area for ticket tables, like let's say a kiosk? And then you're gonna offer us to pay extra money to put the tables where they were?
Yes.
How about if we all decide to pay that extra money, you're gonna have an empty kiosk on the corner of the parking lot?
Yep. Well, I'll tell you what, if I were a boat, I'd take that kiosk.
But wait a
The
minute.
only one in there, huh?
Once again, you're getting
Free?
ahead of yourselves, because we're not gonna do the kiosk outside of the redevelopment.
Right.
So I think we're talking in
say that.
circular.
I'm just throwing ideas of like what Mark is saying about charging extra for keeping the table where it is. I mean, it's a good idea, it's another idea, which probably we'll consider, but, I mean, you have to see everything. I mean, if you're gonna put the money to build a kiosk and have a designated area for it, but then also give the option for the boats to keep the tables there, I mean, that creates a little bit of a waste of, resources, I say.
I think we're focused on the existing,
Exactly,
you know, what
that's-
is the
that's the redesign.
canvas that we have
Could happen like-
today and for the
Might be
next,
so different.
you know, this is, the kiosk is not gonna happen for a little while, at least a couple of years, you know what I mean? It would seem.
What's your reasoning for making that statement?
Because I thought that we were gonna wait until the, whole public landing was redeveloped before we.
What I'm hearing from select board members is that they intend to have it there in the spring.
Well, I think that
Kiosk?
this is where we kind of hope is the people listening to what we're saying is that you guys are the ones helping us talk to them about that, because if they put us where that kiosk place, it is a drainage ditch. You know, it's like you can't have electrical wires in there when you have 6 inches of water, which happens every time it rains hard. I mean, it needs a little infrastructure change, and all those utilities that we use are gonna have to be moved, right? But we can't move
You
them
say
later.
that, but I mean, your pole where your phone and utilities are right there
Well-
where they plan on putting the kiosk.
Mine is,
No,
but
each
what about
one
Jeff's
has-
or the Sally, which is way down at the end of the dock?
Yeah, no,
I
it-
mean, we're talking about, you know, like there's some infrastructure issues, that's the reason that this stopped in the first place this year, but nobody's talking about those infrastructure issues. And I was like, first time somebody gets electrocuted in a public landing because the rain came, you know. I mean, it could go on for hours, but if it's like, we're gonna try to fix this in April, it's not gonna work. I mean, how are you
Well,
gonna
and
build
I
it
guess
now?
I'm frustrated now, hearing that you just said that that's where the select board's going. Why are we even having this discussion? Because if the select board's made up their mind, then are they even gonna listen
Yeah.
to what we're saying?
We need to hear that from
I'm
them.
really frustrated.
Just like they need to, they want to hear from us, about, what, you know, what our proposed work plan is, et cetera. If there is a timeline, an aggressive timeline for creating a new kiosk, because this is part of our purview, we need to hear that from them.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean,
I think that's
even-
that's another action item that we need is, we need to hear, is this something that you're considering?
Already made up your mind
That's
about.
already made up your mind about, because
So-
it does affect our decision.
Josh, to clarify things, okay, I present to the select board on October 8th, our work plan, okay? So, and while we're on that, let's just schedule our next meeting for October 2nd.
It's a Wednesday.
That's a Wednesday.
Right.
So, hopefully, we're gonna present our work plan, and, you know, hopefully, we're gonna have some sort of draft outline here that we can present to them, and get some further direction.
I think we should try to have Steve here in these meetings, because he's the one who has some ideas, and he's the one who actually is gonna develop any changes on the harbor. So I think it will be important to have his input in this kind of conversation, I think.
You mean the overall whole thing?
Well, no, if we planning to, let's say, to propose changes by October 8, and then to see if, like, for example, the creation of a waiting area, for example, that's one of the
So,
ideas.
now let's,
He's the one who's gonna do it with, or try to, and he's the one who I think should be here to throw some
think
ideas.
about that for a minute, all right? Let's think about that, because if we're discussing the licensing agreement, does the waiting area really affect that? And, you know, that may fall into a whole nother category, and that may be, we may not want to complicate the license agreement with those details. All right? And that would become then a harbor management issue, which would then be Steve's.
But the waiting area, isn't the point of the waiting area to alleviate congestion specifically around the tables which are in the agreement? So it's sort of like one fed off of the other. So I think in that way, the waiting area does become part of the agreement discussion.
Like,
Yes, but you could say something like, you know, we propose leaving the tables where we are and having the harbor master work with the day sailors in a waiting area for the passengers. You know, and that could be part of the, you know, this is why we feel it's okay to leave the tables there. You don't have to state it in the license agreement.
No,
You know, we can state it as a justification of why we're recommending this.
the only reason why I mention this is because if the select board is so eager to like put us somewhere else, like on this coming April, I think proposing a waiting area or proposing some changes, I think will change their mind and kind of like
Yeah.
rethink about.
And like I said, I mean,
Yeah.
the reason this is all coming to a head is because it's been, you know, it's been slowly building as an issue, and it's come to head now. So you guys are the guys that are down there all the time. So you are the guys that should be able to have the solution and
Yeah.
understand how to fix it. And it's not all about, what would be in your best interest, because that's just not gonna go over.
Yeah. I think, since we've been doing this, that we've been listening. I think the problem is, the connection is that either somebody wants to use that space to put something else there completely, and that they just don't want us here anymore, which is a possibility
No.
that I've accepted.
No. Get that thought right out of your head, all right? Because that's not the issue.
Right. And then I feel like as time has gone on and the 20 years we've done this, that when people have brought, things up to our attention, that we've changed it. Like when people were selling things at the dock, we took care of that. Like, okay, hey, this isn't allowed, so let's get this off here. When people were saying, hey, you can't be soliciting, like we changed our training, like to our employees. We listened about, hey, can we get off of the actual dock and move our tables back? We did that the year before. Hey, can we get off these benches? We've done that the year before. Like we've been trying. The problem is that whatever we seem to be trying, it's only like we get one complaint, we work on it, and then we find out there are 10 more. You know what I mean? Like we can only react in the amount of time that we have to so many things every year. And the problem is all of us have been working like humongous hours every week, so trying to add anything else into our lives is.
I understand that, and what complicates things is July and August are just overwhelming down there. And that's when everything comes to a head, and now it's September, things are quieted down, everything's more comfortable, and June is quiet, and, it's nice to be down there.
Would you sign a contract for multiple years, not knowing where you're gonna be, right? Knowing that you're asking for more money, and just accept it?
I mean, this is like an office space.
For a boat, sure,
You would?
Yeah.
You would just accept that putting us in the kiosk is gonna be fine?
yeah.
Yeah. See, I think that's bogus, and I'll just be straight up about it. And I've never been in a place where that's worked. It's just ended all of these boats.
It's like a leasing an office and a building. Well, this year it's gonna be in the third floor, but next year maybe in the fifth floor, or in the basement. So it's like,
A restaurant.
Do we get to pick our spot? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, do I get to have the corner spot?
Well,
Because
that's-
I know that's gonna be a better spot.
And that's why this is relevant for the agreement, and especially for going to a 3-year agreement. Because I think it's true that what is going to be spelled out in this document is going to lay out the rights for the signers. So, whoever signs it will have a certain amount of assurance, because it'll be spelled out in here. It's
Yeah.
gonna say, so that's what that is on us to iron these details out
Yeah.
hopefully before October 8th, but certainly by,
Well, it sounds like
November.
we need some significant input from the select board,
Yeah.
because we're hearing these things, where are they coming from? The select board wants this and that, but let's hear that directly from the select
Can we
board.
invite them to the next
Well, they
meeting?
they have a liaison, it's Taylor
Well,
Benson.
we need to pressure them
Yeah, I agree.
to do whatever, have a special meeting with them,
If
or,
they've got an agenda, I actually want to hear it.
Yeah. Like, there's no communication. It's like you're telling me one thing, Steve's telling me another thing, the group's telling me one thing. Different select board people are telling me different things.
yeah.
So I don't know who to believe, and honestly, at some point there, I feel like there's some liability if everybody is just talking separately. Like, I don't think there's no cohesion, you know what I mean?
no, but you just mentioned that they're gonna do changes in April. Well, this is the first time I heard that.
And we're hearing about it a month before we're supposed to sign a different contract.
I brought that up at every meeting we've been at so
Well,
far.
I got the feeling though, like a few meetings out though, that we had kind of come to a point where we could discuss it, and Steve has kind of made it feel like we're gonna probably be at the same place next year, so I don't think that's completely true. Like, what you guys are saying aren't all matching up, is what I'm trying to say. You may be saying one thing, Steve may be saying another, and we may be getting, yeah, so we're not, something's not connectively making it to us, because that's how I feel. Like, I felt super positive when they rebuilt the harbor committee, because nothing was being communicated anymore. So,
So then,
so do you see where maybe we're getting a different story than you are, and maybe you're getting a different story than we are? Because you guys each have different people that you're reporting
so
to.
let's ask them, let's ask the select board to send a representative, on October 2nd, and before we present our work plan, so that they can tell us what any plan, short-term, I would call that short-term, plans that they envision that could, because it does affect it, otherwise we're sort of a little bit wasting our time, you know what I mean?
Correct.
In hammering out some agreement if they've already made up their
Well, we're not
mind.
hammering out an agreement. What we're doing is we're presenting them with a list of recommendations.
Right?
But if they already made their mind on something, I mean, if we can recommend whatever.
Well,
It's easier to work
You
together.
pretty much just told us they'd already made our mind.
It's easier to work together than try to present different things and defend our ideas.
And I really feel truly, like if any group of people that have been down in the harbor all these years have been trying to work to a common goal and not just feel like, I feel like this is that group. There's not like arguments about schedules, people are working with each other. Like this is the group you wanna work with because this is, you're setting up the precedent for the next 30 years presumably.
I have got to go. I have to go.
Okay, you know, and I know that there's a couple of important
Okay.
issues. I know you got a trip here. Okay, so the license fee item, you know, there's a lot of things around that. We've talked about adding a sanitation clause.
and that is in the license agreement?
Right. And,
Paragraph
you know,
4.
I put down here mandatory pump outs by the headhunter is a possibility there.
By headhunters.
I don't know if that makes
Oh,
sense.
that's the pump up boat, you mean?
That's a pump
Yeah.
out boat. Headhunter is the name of the, that's how it's described on the town website, I believe.
Or at Wayfair. I just pump out every time I fuel up.
Yeah, us too.
But we feel, we feel that that's important, and we think that that should be adhered to. And, so, okay, we talked about the annual review, and we need to define what that would be about. I wanna skip down here to, licensed boat not in the water or not being used for license activities. We have 7 day sailor licenses currently, is that correct? And how many active primary day sailors are there right now in the water? I'll say 6. 6. Are being used. And what is that unused license? What boat is that? The Sally. And where is the
So-
Sally?
Yeah.
Is the Sally run at all this year?
No.
Is it appropriate for a licensed boat not to run and be able to hold that license?
Advertise for somebody else or another boat.
And yet the Sally is running a second boat, the summertime. Is that correct?
Selling tickets for the summertime, yes.
The summertime is the second.
So, okay, so now what if we add a paragraph that says, license agreement only pertains to vessels operating in the water and operating.
Well, I'd say loss of license.
I think this is a review issue, right?
Right.
This is your harbor master and, you know,
Yeah.
harbor committee review,
Yeah.
like, hey, we don't feel like it's fair
Yeah.
that this boat is operating one way and not the other.
Because you could have a situation where you've got a vessel that
Breaks down bad.
thought it was going to go in the water and, for whatever reason, is unable to. And, you know, may be intentional, it may not be. And at the end of the year, if it didn't go in all year, then you're exactly right. Steve would have his conversation and say, you didn't comply with any of the terms of the agreement, because the boat wasn't in the water. So, therefore.
Or you put any,
that-
and you didn't put any efforts to
You
put it
didn't
in
put
the
any
water.
efforts in the water, I'm sorry, you know, you violated, you didn't violate, you
Didn't comply.
You didn't comply with the terms, and so therefore, your agreement is terminated. I think that's
So,
entirely appropriate.
under paragraph 6 is the list of, the town requirements. So if we added, like an H, just state something like that, however you want to word it. Somebody come up with that.
I think if
But
the
in-
permit is not being used and it's not because of mechanical issues, sorry. Elliot.
Exactly.
So it just was,
So the consensus is that not running your primary boat is inappropriate?
Yes.
For a term of 1 year or for a whole year, or is it
I think for,
With a good excuse.
3 weeks late?
Without a real excuse. I mean, it could be because the engine blew up
there
and
was
you-
1 year OLAD didn't run before I owned it because it was being rebuilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
The
one
town
thing.
asked them to apply for the permit, right? And then they gave them, a verbal like, yep, we get it. And then, it could happen to any of us again.
Yeah.
It
You
could
gotta
be
place
It's
the
the same
plank,
as-
and all of a sudden you gotta rebuild the whole frame.
and it's the same
Surprise,
if you
you know?
have a harbor float or something and you don't use it you're not putting your boat in for the year, you get a 1-year pass, provided that you've communicated with the harbor master, and then, but if you don't do it the second year, you lose your float or mooring, I think it is. I think it's both.
When you built Lazy Dog too.
Yeah,
You
not
didn't
for
use
the
it till
summer,
fall.
till September, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a way to assign unused slots on the dock to somebody else who,
No, I don't think that's a slippery slope.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, I understand but it's already so.
Because the Sally's got all those slots and no one's using it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they ran all of the trips that they were scheduled
Holy
for,
moly.
Okay,
it would be interesting.
so there seems to be a consensus that there should be a boat in the water if it's licensed, and there
it should be
Should
operated.
you feel like there are too many boats down there? There were a long time that only 5 permits were used,
Yep.
and then you opened it up really big.
So could you say in 2 of the 3 years on the contract, you need to be in the water?
Okay, how about limit on number of licenses issued to a single operator? Is that appropriate, inappropriate? Do we care?
It would just be me. Or, well, it wouldn't just be me, it would be Ray too.
Well, I mean, that's kind of like if a corporation came in and bought all of them.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Well, that gets to, is the license for the boat or for the individual? We had that conversation the other day.
Well, that is another topic on the list here also. And maybe this issue of number of licenses to a single operator, that's not an issue for us to
Well-
take on.
Because again, they're not using the public.
No,
Aaron
a,
has 2 boats, but he's using one ticket.
Do you,
table.
Aaron, if you don't mind my asking, do
Sure.
you sign 2
2
agreements?
separate agreements.
You
every
do,
year.
so then I think that makes it a moot point, because the agreement says, this agreement between blank person, which operates the vessel blank, hereinafter referred to as licensee. So, and this kind of gets to another issue, but if you were to change that name of the vessel, that is a material change to the agreement. Do you see what I mean? Or, and it's one vessel name. So, if Josh Moore decides to buy Surprise, OLED, Lazy Jack, you know what I mean? I'd have to do 3.
I love the sound,
Yeah,
Rich.
nice,
Tell me
huh?
more.
That would be 3 separate agreements, you know what I mean? So I don't think we need, I guess what
Let's
I'm
not
saying is,
get
I don't
bogged
think we need
down
those.
in that one.
okay,
Can I, in 6E, about the signed, the signs shall be permitted, the sign no larger than 60 square feet. We talked about, in recommending to, not allowed anything else, to advertise anything else other than
That
the,
is-
Paragraph
it's on
F,
here, yeah.
last sentence.
it's in the last one? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's a new one, so it's highlighted.
Paragraph F.
The only permitted items advertised for sale shall be day sale tickets.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, perfect, thank you.
How about day sale tickets of intended or licensed vessel? Like, so I couldn't sell tickets, I'm just telling you, I've seen this wormhole already used once. I'm not trying, just a simple
Of the
change.
license, yeah.
But if you've got a licensed boat that's not operating,
Then you're out of luck. I mean, so like if the OLAD wasn't running right, I can't bring another boat in and have it run off the dock. They don't-
I think it should be more specific to like the boat.
but you couldn't, you wouldn't be able to sell tickets to a second boat.
Well, they have a permit.
No, but what I'm saying, if you're licensed, if you don't have a boat that you're operating off of the town dock with a license agreement, you no longer have the right to sell a second boat either.
Correct.
Okay.
But the point here, what I'm saying here, the only permitted items advertised and for sale should be day sale tickets. But it doesn't say that it has to be the boat that actually is in the agreement. And so that means I can sell tickets, I can sell day sale tickets for any boat.
Okay, very
For
good,
the-
that should be clarified.
Could be day sale
For
tickets
permitted
for the
vessels.
permit, for the
For the
permit.
licensed vessel.
Or for the second boat in that case.
Permitted, because I have
Day sale tickets for the licensed vessel.
Vessel or vessels.
vessel or vessels, yeah.
Yes, okay, that's good. That's agreement there, that's great. Okay, there's something that's simpler for us all to get a handle on.
Yep.
Okay, the rest of the items on here, you know, I'd say aren't that critical.
I wish I could stay. I have a trip.
So October 2nd, Wednesday, is that going to be here in the morning?
Yeah, 7:30 a.m., and that's going to be one of our regular monthly meetings, not a special work group for the license, although the license will be discussed there.
So the harbor committee has a new liaison?
Taylor,
Taylor is
I
not.
think Taylor, I think at one point there was sort of two, I think it was
Okay.
Bob Falciani, and, but I think Taylor's the primary now.
Bob wants to transition to Taylor.
Okay.
Okay, so we touched on this, Josh, you mentioned it, the transferability of a license agreement. And, you know, we've heard questions about the license agreement, does it apply to a specific operator? Or is it specific to an operator and a specific vessel? Or, so, if somebody wanted to sell, would they sell their agreement? That would be subject to review by the town.
See, and the way this agreement reads now, it's the person, all right, referred to as game, and, let's see. So it's the person's name, the operator's name, and then the vessel's name,
That's right. And-
right? Hereinafter referred to as licensee. So it's, the license is a combination of the operator and the vessel, right?
So it's both. So that's a change, because it wasn't like that, I think, huh?
So it doesn't change.
It was always like that?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's, yeah,
And
that
can we-
hasn't been changed.
But we talked about the fact that if we have 3-year licenses, we don't want to have a new license staggered so that they can never be changed.
No, and that comes,
You'd have to change the name with the vessel if the vessel gets
that
sold.
comes in paragraph 2.
Okay, so you do a new agreement for 1 year.
For the
but if-
balance of that term.
For the penalty of the time.
So what does reassigned mean in paragraph 2?
Well, the select board has to reassign it. You have to go before the select board to approve the reassignment
To another vessel, for example?
to another vessel. I mean, if the operator is upgrading a vessel, you go to the select board, have it reassigned. If the operator is selling the vessel, you go to the select board and have it reassigned.
Reassigned to the new owner.
Yes.
So you feel there is flexibility built into the agreement that allows for those transactions to occur?
Well, especially transactions where bank approval that come up like last time, like where you had to be pre-approved by a bank before the actually sale goes through. So it's almost like, you know, it will be requested by the select board to
Yeah,
mean-
but the bank could also say, you know, this is.
Subject.
You're approved, subject to the approval of your license agreement.
All right, well, then it sounds like transferability is pretty well established and that there are things in place to deal
That's,
with.
and that's new, that wasn't in there before, that reassigned part, right? That was not,
No, that's new.
that's, yeah.
See how
This is
that's
the number 2?
highlighted,
Yeah, number 2.
somewhat highlighted?
Okay.
Do we need to, I mean, since it is an important point, do we need to, I don't want to overcomplicate it, but do we need to define that reassignment requires select board approval? Do we need to, in the event agreement is terminated or,
Well, this becomes a new agreement
Um,
of a different,
Yeah, I mean,
it's just that word reassigned is it's a big word now. It's an
but
important.
it's not a reassignment, it's a new agreement for 1 year or, you know, you just make it for the remainder of the term, you don't,
You can do it 3 years,
agreement, you
yeah.
make it. So it's a new agreement, it's not a
So
reassignment.
it's no
The
risk.
reassign would be if it's the same operator, but let's say he sold the OLAD and got a beautiful motor yacht. Still wants to do the same thing, still can carry 16 passengers, whatever, fits the same length, all that. So that's a reassignment of the vessel, same operator.
Well, that's why I think we
So
should
that,
put in the
and
registration
we're
number
okay
in
with
here.
that? Because we trust the operator and it's not about the vessel.
Documentation number.
Right, it'd have to be both.
Yeah,
But it has
either
to be
one.
subject to approval too.
But what if there were a separate form that just?
Not about these.
So the problem is like you could apply to augment a day sailor license or something like approval, you know, a sale. It's tricky because if you're trying to sell the vessel, at least the prior owners for me, they didn't allow me to talk to anybody about it until I got approved by the bank, barring that one last thing. You know, because they didn't want like 20 people coming up and making them an offer at the last minute. They just wanted to sell me the boat and be done. Do you know what I mean? But like the moment you open the floodgates, there's floodgates. If that makes any sense, and maybe makes more sense to me, but I think your dad and mom were the same way when they sold the boat. I think they were pretty private about it until it happened. So for reasons, because there's just so many complications that go along until the end. I mean, we're applying with you, but we're also applying with the federal government to make a transfer of ownership, and so it's tricky. There's like all these steps you have to get to. Like you can't apply for that until you purchase it. You know, it took me 6 months basically. I don't know how long it took you, but
Yeah.
it took me a long time.
It's-
Well, seems like you would still be locked into a purchase agreement. And in that purchase agreement, it ought to be based on the licensing agreement, being able to renew the license agreement, being able to renew your federal permits.
Yeah.
All
It's just like
subject to.
buying- Subject to, just like buying a house, you know, you've got the conditions, you know?
Yeah, I
And-
mean-
And the seller can choose, to not accept someone that has conditions, or there might be a buyer who says, yeah, I'll buy your boat, but I know that I might not get approved by the select board. I'm willing to take that
It's like
risk.
saying, you know, another business wants to buy a piece of real estate here, all right? It's subject to the town approving that it can be a Dunkin' Donuts, all right? It's still gotta go before the town, it becomes public at that point. It's just the way it is.
Oh, yeah, no, I get that. I guess what I'm saying is that there's a weird gray area from the point that it gets approved to where the person owns the boat, so you're applying for a boat you don't own yet. Is that, how's
Yeah.
that for a clear way of saying it?
That's-
Which
Yeah, but
is-
that's what happens.
That's the same way with real estate.
I don't think you can get around that. I mean, you have to
Yeah.
apply before just to know if we're gonna be able to get the permit or not.
Right.
So that's the contract subject to approval by the town.
All right, I'm happy to let go. I'm just playing devil's advocate because I don't.
Yeah.
I wasn't very
Unfortunately,
clear when I
that's,
did it.
I mean, if you buy a piece of real estate, it's the same thing. I mean, approval, subject to inspection.
But, you know, and, you know, actually, that raises a whole nother issue here.
Uh-oh.
Mark, I don't know if I like keep on it. I don't know what I want to hear.
How much is that a licensing agreement really affect the value of your
Can
business?
I ask you a question personally?
Yeah,
And I did say personally.
yeah.
Is this you, or is this everybody at this table feeling that way?
No, this is me just raising this question.
Yeah. But I've heard you say it a few times, and I'm happy to discuss whatever you want to.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather be on the table than not be on the table, because this is
Yeah.
where I feel there's a lack of communication. But, you know, is this coming from you, or is it also coming from the select board, or is it coming from Audra, is it coming
No,
from?
no, it's coming directly from me.
Yeah.
You're stating that it's, you know, in order to sell a business, and you've stated before that, you know, the value of the business is so much greater with a licensing agreement in place that, you know, that raises the question, I mean, gee, how valuable is this licensing agreement? And how, you know, is this really, I mean, it sounds like this is a great deal and.
A great deal in terms of like, what we pay yearly?
Yes,
A great deal in terms of it's good for the operators.
yes. I mean, it's like, well.
I think that's what I'm
wow,
hearing.
Yeah. I mean, if having a a $2,500 agreement with the town increases the value of your business by $100,000, $200,000?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like,
I think,
That's, if
I think you're-
if you think that way, I mean, real estate is,
Drives northwards.
yeah.
I'm-
And-
I'm
and
leaving
again,
these games.
Right, again, I'm just
Please
playing
take.
we're gonna play Battleship.
devil's
They're
advocate
on
here.
the table for the
So,
taking.
so do you say, hey, you know what? Maybe
Yeah, take them all.
Maybe this is like a membership to a golf course, and there should be like a buy-in.
all right, so what do you suggest with that comment? What is your suggestion? Is do we have to pay more? We have to pay like a transfer fee? Like
I'm
what
just
is?
saying, well, gee, you know, if.
Gotta go as well.
Hey, Sean, nice meeting you.
I think that like, yeah,
It is valuable. You there's no go around. It is valuable. Yeah. When I bought Surprise from Josh's parents, I bought a 29-year-old business,
Yep.
and that is a great value.
Yep.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
And I bought a boat that had 29 agreements to the town. But that's part of the town, it's part of the deal, it's part of the heritage of the town. I mean, I don't know why you want to put a value of that. The
I'm
value
just playing devil
the
advocate.
value
here.
is-
I'm just saying.
for us, and the value is for the town too, I think. Because we attract thousands of tourists to this town. And name one town in Maine that has the same capabilities of day sailing and Camden. Tell me one.
and.
There's
and-
none.
And all of us are capped
So we
by-
provide a huge asset for the town too. So don't just look at from the benefit of us, just look at for the benefit for the whole town and every business around us. And all the employment that we provide to like all of the people and residents of this town. We actually, myself, in July and August, let me finish, I provide 19 employees. So I have a payroll of 19 people. So that I create also a huge asset for this town. So don't just look at our benefit. We provide a huge benefit for this town.
I know.
Okay,
But I'm
so
looking at it from a
I'm just answering
landlord
your-
perspective too, all
Yeah.
right? This town provides a huge asset for you.
Yeah, and we do too.
Yes.
So,
Right,
okay,
it's a-
so
it's a-
it's an even game
It's
right
an even
here.
game.
I know.
It's a
So
symbiotic.
let's not try to like,
All right,
let's just,
I drop it.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, that'd be great,
Playing
because
devil
I-
advocate, and I just, that's it.
Properties.
I think it's a great team. Day sailors in this town, we provide, and if you count, and I did, in an average day, there is over 200 people sailing out of this town. All right, so that provides a huge.
Sail in, or?
Yes, the sailing, it's about an average in July and August, 200.
They sail.
On all the day sailors in this town.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a huge amount of people that come to this town for day sailing. So
So,
it's,
so there are also 200 people that get in the way of the citizens from using the harbor.
I don't understand.
It's like saying Acadia National Park is
I don't
getting in the way of the
I-
citizens
I-
of Bar Harbor.
It's ridiculous.
In fact, people come here to not go to Bar Harbor. And you know, Bar Harbor is always going to be my greatest example because there were so many regulations put it, one person bought everybody out. I mean, one person in the end had enough money, and there are two boats that run against 20, all owned by one guy. So, you know, that's not what I want. And I don't want catamarans.
And that's,
Like, I like these small boats because you have personal relationships and you're actually interacting with people.
and I agree with you, and that's, you know, that goes back to, you know, what do we want for this town?
Right.
Exactly, and
And we want the small business and the private entrepreneurs and, you know.
and luckily, it stays like this. It's luckily, all of the operators out of, at least on the town side of the business, they're all family-oriented businesses, which is, I think, the town is aiming to. You don't want corporations to buy 3 boats and,
And I'm really,
When did the licensed boats change from 5 to 7?
what's that?
When did the boats change from 5, quantity 5 to 7?
Oh,
I heard earlier that it used to be 5.
yeah, it was a few years ago now. I'd say it kind of went to 6 for a while, but there was the same problem. One boat wasn't actually running. And then the other boat that I have there running now is only running there now because in the end, 2 boats stopped running. And so there were 4 permits, and I saw a 5th permit open.
Oh, okay,
I mean,
just
that-
curious.
And I think that sometimes it's better to deal with the person you know than it is to deal with the person you don't know. So, I think that they were really worried. I mean, it's just such the flavor of this committee versus the flavor of the last one, and the select board as a whole over the last 15 years, and the select board now, they're just totally different flavors. Like, for me, I feel like I'm learning a lot about, things I never knew about in this town, if that makes any sense.
I have a question, on the day sailors proposal, the item rental of town slips for boarding during special circumstances.
Oh, yeah.
Could you
Yeah.
elaborate on what that's about?
That's Dom requested that.
Yeah, can I speak on that one? When that was brought up, it was Dominic had cruise ship people that get dropped off at the town landing and then have to walk up and around and down to his boat. All right, and what he requested was that he be able to pick them up at the town dock when that happens. All right, and my suggestion was that that is a harbor management issue, and that is dealt with on a case-by-case scenario by the harbor master when it's appropriate.
And I
Okay.
think they're doing it right now, because
Yeah.
yesterday he was doing the same thing, and I think he got approval by the harbor master, and I think that's what they're actually
And
doing
that's
right
just
now.
to clean things up down there, and I don't think it's appropriate to set a schedule and make it hard and fast, because they're not supposed to run off that dock. When there's space on the dock and you can get in there and make it work, then sure, make it work, but otherwise,
Well, so you're telling me Dom drove that issue, getting that on the list, so it's apparently important to him, and it was termed as a rental. And so I wondered what would
Well, we
happen.
do rent it.
I think what happened, he had a little issue in the early season with Steve probably not allowing to do that, and then he proposed that he can probably, under the cruise ship schedule, he can rent a slip for that particular day, just to do that kind of transition, easy transition in between passengers. But I guess they must have fixed it up, and the issue, and I think.
So here's an example, like on my own behalf, happens to be once in a blue moon, but somebody says to me, I'd like to do this trip, and I say, well, I have a schedule I have to keep, and the guy says, well, can you pick me up anywhere else? And then at that point, I would go to Steve and be like, could I pay you to rent this dock for the day, like everybody else does, 24-hour period? And I'm paying for it. So that's a way of doing that. The only difference is I might ask for that once in 5 years, right? And Dom's really got a situation where the cruise ship's late because it was a stormy day and they're a half hour behind, and then now they're all trying to load down there. So instead of him trying to circle around, it's better for him just to park and pay and unload and load them and send them on their way. That's the way I take that.
I think there is actually somewhere in the ordinances, it says that there is no allowed to use the town dock for day sailing operations.
it does say that.
And that's, I think, what raises the issue is whether we can pick up passengers or drop passengers in that dock.
Yes,
That's why I think he's kind of
yeah. And that's
asking for
why-
that.
Yeah, that's why I'm opposed to a schedule, he's proposing to present a schedule of days and times he's gonna rent that dock. That doesn't work. I mean, that dock is for townspeople and private dockage.
But should we be defining what those special circumstances are, that it's allowed, not a schedule, but should we be defining it? Because that is the slippery slope that we're talking about,
Yes, it is,
And Dom's not the only one using it. I'm seeing that the cruise ships are using it now for offloading more and more. They're using these
yeah,
slips.
they're using the slips rather than the pickup area.
Yep.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's just because the slips are a little more sturdy than that pickup reserve dock is, because
They keep hitting us. I got-
because they keep smacking the
I had
keys
to
or
call
what.
the insurance company already once on them this year. I had to call
Well-
the insurance company on once last year. They hit
So-
you really hard.
They hit it 3 times in one day to us. 3 times in one day.
on the boat even.
But I think that because sorry, I was gonna say, no, I was gonna tie it to cruise ships exclusively, but you guys would like to have the option to use that under special circumstances also, so it's not just a
I
cruise
mean,
ship.
it's not just cruise ship people, I mean,
So if you go in there, right, and you ask for that, like what I do, it's like Steve will look his calendar, right, and he knows who's spending the night overnight, and then he knows who has to be off the dock by like 10 a.m. That's when they rent it. Unless they want to pay for a second night, then they can stay, right? And then he leaves spots in the afternoon from, I believe, 11 o'clock until 4 for people to come in and out. Does this all sound right to everybody? But usually when Dom rents that spot, he's renting the spot in the morning. Like, that's how I get it. Like, he's not interfering with the lunch crowd.
Yeah.
Because he comes back and he unloads off of, or he tries to.
See, and I don't see this as anything that we want to put in the license agreement.
Yeah.
You know, it's not,
I think it's a harbor management issue for now,
yes.
and until it becomes a problem, as long as Steve
And, you know,
has.
when it becomes a problem, that can be an appeal of the harbor
That's right.
master's decision. you
well,
know.
there was because also we raised questions about some of the windjammers, like using these docks for day sailing operation. That was also the same, you know, it brought to attention on the ordinances that say you're not supposed to like use that dock for day sailing operation. So that's when, you know, the question was like whether they can do it or not, and what is really the
Oh,
use.
I looked into that, and they said, well, it's primary use. You know, so the windjammers their primary use is windjammers, so they can,
They can do 17 now or 15 day sails. And,
yeah.
okay. So then if there's that flexibility, why not be other flexibility to everybody else? I mean, just, that's it. That's the answer.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah, so.
It's been interesting. I mean, like on 4th of July, there were, 2 other windjammers, right? Didn't both boats go? Well, I guess it was the Grace and the Summertime were running an additional 50 passengers out through the harbor at the same time, but, if you want to do that 3 times in one day, maybe you did. We did a lot of trips that day. But it definitely is, I definitely just didn't even touch that side of the channel. I just kept away.
So, what are you saying? It's,
Just change the traffic issues in there a little bit.
okay,
In the end, I'm done arguing about this particular topic because I feel like it's done. But forward thinking is more important to me than back thinking at this point.
okay.
I don't ever want to start those arguments. I think part of the reason you're all here is because of that going on for so long.
Right. Okay, it seems like generally, we're looking to the select board to provide us with some guidance on some key issues with respect to the license. And we'd like some input and
What
feedback.
issues?
The fees.
Tables.
And the
Collector's
kiosk, ticket sales, charging extra for ticket sale table or
Parking.
whatever. That's something that we would like to hear from them.
Yeah, because
Am I
Yeah,
right?
I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to, I'm with all you guys, I'm trying to figure out how it all goes together.
Puts together, exactly.
The select board, I mean, they have an awful lot on their plate, all right? And they're not there to cater to us. We're there to give them guidance.
So, but in terms of that process, it seems like, so looking at the next steps, what we're gonna do here, I think that it would be very helpful to invite a select board member, probably the liaison, to the October 2nd meeting, to let us know if there are particular short-term things that they are envisioning, that we need to be made aware of, because we are, per their direction, working on day sailor agreements. So if there's anything that will potentially relate to day sailor operations in the short term, we need to know about it. That's a reasonable request. They can come, they can send a note, they can do whatever they want. So I think that we would ask for that. We'll work up our bullet points, our discussion, if you will, the options, issues and options, sort of revising Elliot's document. And then, based hopefully on their feedback on October 2nd, we will work on that list so that we have solid recommendations to make for them.
Josh, you know what I would like to see is this outline that you're putting together with the options, all right? If we have that prepared for my meeting with the select board, I can present that to them and say, we've been in discussions on this, these are some of the thoughts we've come up with. We would like some feedback on that,
When is
all
that?
right? And that may be the catalyst that would get us feedback.
When is
from them.
this?
That's the October 8th. That's when you present our work plan.
That's the
on
October 8th.
That's, I mean, we can do that. That's so much beyond, that's getting so much more detailed than the work plan. That's delving into one particular topic of the work plan. But if you want to do that during the select board meeting, I suppose that's fine, yeah, I guess we can do that. We can have that ready for
I
them.
mean, you know,
Yeah.
that's.
I consider this more of a working document
Yeah,
that
exactly.
we're all working on, so I'm a little bit like, we're sharing with the select board our working document, but nothing to hide, it's fine.
Yeah, and that way,
They know how we're,
you know, they know what we're thinking, they're looking at these different proposals, and,
yeah, I think we can do that.
feedback. All right? And, so it'd be nice to have that, you know, in advance,
Oh, yeah.
so that it can all be sent to the select boards for review before the meeting.
Oh, definitely. Well, and I think if they do send someone to this October 2nd meeting, it might even change. It might be, we'll certainly have it done well before October 2nd, but it might even change based on whatever they tell us on October 2nd. You
Just
know what
like
I
a
mean?
working document.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So we just,
Yep.
nice.
All right. I gotta go.
So we are gonna invite the liaison to the October
He's always
2nd.
notified.
Right.
He's always notified.
But should we make a specific request, since he only came to the first one, right?
No,
No, he came to the last one.
he's been to all our meetings.
Oh, okay.
So the October 2nd is an official Harvard
Official
meeting?
Harvard meeting, yeah.
Okay, so Steve is gonna be here?
Yep.
Obviously,
Should be,
yeah.
yeah.
And that's the thing, that's why probably Taylor is not here, is because this is just a work
Exactly.
group. And-
Yep.
And, you know, my thought was that the work group doesn't even get televised or recorded. I mean, we're just here to bounce ideas amongst each other, but Liz says, no, we get recorded.
We are
So-
being recorded, yeah.
So we're recorded, so.
Cool.
So that's it, meeting's over.
Thank you so much for the time.
Well, and thank you guys.
Take a game.
Which one are you going for, Josh? You gotta do the regatta one. Makes more sense.